To start off, we've got James Osborne. James has got 20 years experience within the recruitment sector. Non-exec director for 7 recruitment businesses at the moment. He's the CEO of the Elite Recruitment Network, which is UK's leading peer-to-peer networking club for the recruitment space. He would like to invite anybody that's a senior manager or a recruitment owner in the room or attending the event to attend as a guest to his monthly Elite Leaders sessions as well. So I'm going to hand you over to James to go through how to build a business to start off with.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. We're just saying how we felt like a boy band sitting there, like a Westlife sort of scene, which is quite exciting. I have to say I am in quite a fortunate position. I spend a lot of time with lots of different recruitment companies every day, either as a non-exec director, providing advisory services, or through our Elite Leader programs that we run each month. All the people I work with, all the recruitment organizations I work with have a very similar goal, which is to create some form of significant shareholder value in their businesses, some of them potentially for an exit at some stage as well. And without doubt, I have to say it's a very exciting times, I think, for the recruitment sector, and I believe a lot of the organisations we're working with are going to realise some of those objectives quite soon. But it's only exciting if you've got your house in order as a recruitment organisation. Now, last month I got together with a number of recruitment industry entrepreneurs and experts, and we wanted to ask ourselves the question, that was our sort of objective for the day, is that if we were to build a recruitment company today from scratch with sort of a blank canvas, what are some of the key things that we would need to think about in order to create a really high-value, fast-growing recruitment business? I then sense-checked this against 40 recruitment organisations that I know which are high-value, which are doing very well at the moment, just to try and sense-check to make sure that our ideas were similarly aligned to what's actually happening in the market at the moment. And what we identified were, in essence, were 12, I suppose, what we call building blocks, which we clustered into sort of 4 key clusters, one being positioning, range, composition, and people. And what I'd like to do today, if that's okay, just walk you through very briefly these 12 building blocks, which I think are the key elements of a great, enduring recruitment business. So if we were to build, we're not going to build a recruitment company tomorrow, but if we were to build a recruitment business tomorrow, one of the first things we look at with regards to is our positioning. And that will start off with our markets. We'll look at the markets that we're working in and try and identify the criteria that will create a market which we believe is low risk to the future of our growth. We have an organisation that we work with that have 5 very clear criteria they utilise when they're opening up a new recruitment business or targeting a new market. The 5 areas are high gross margins, increasing demand, a positive change potentially caused by some form of change in legislation in the future. Maybe there's complacent competitors in that market, or even the buyers themselves are quite disorganized. So first of all, we look and identify those robust market opportunities. We then compare that with the talent pools that we would utilize to try and fulfill those markets. Now, what we understand currently in the markets, there's quite a talent shortage for most of the sectors. In 2020, they're suggesting there's going to be a 20 million shortfall across the EU in talent, which is obviously quite a concern. Now, that creates opportunities for recruitment companies, but also challenges as well. If you are going to go after a market where there is a rich talent pool, where there's lots of talent in that talent pool, then you should probably be looking at more of a low margin, high volume type business. If you're looking for a market where the talent is quite scarce, then I suggest you be pushing for retained business and high margin business. And everything that you build in your business should focus around that. I then want to ask the question is, what do we actually want to be known for from our branding point of view? If you Google recruitment consultants you get quite an interesting perception of what people think about recruitment consultants. Obviously, no one in the room today. But what I'd like to understand really, the clear sense of exactly what our brand actually represents. And this is where LinkedIn, I think, comes into its forefront in particular. To me, there are 2 types of recruitment businesses you can have. You can either be sort of inch wide and mile deep, or you can be a generalist where you're touching the services of lots of different sectors and different markets. Whatever you do, though, you've got to choose one, and you have to stick with that. A lot of recruitment companies we work with, a lot of recruitment companies I advise, generally tap into both, which means they have a bit of a confused message and a confused process going out there in the marketplace as well. So you need to understand exactly what you need to be known for. Are you providing services which are significantly value-adding? Is your service a transactional service, or is it transformational? Once we understand our positioning, everything centers around that. We're then going to start looking at what I call the range. Part 1 of the range is looking at the business blend, the types and numbers of different products that you have. When you look at trying to sell a recruitment organization, you're trying to increase your PE ratio on your EBITDA, one of the things that we tend to look at is trying to really increase that PE ratio by having a good range and a good blend of different services within your business. So what we generally say is what we quite like is 50-50 split between contracts and temp and perm. And even within that perm side, pushing as much as we possibly can for retained business as much as contingent business. I do believe the markets at the moment are significantly ripe for retained business, which I think is a great opportunity. I had a client I've been working with for about 12 months, and they said they worked in a market where retained permanent placements would never happen. It just wouldn't wash in our industry whatsoever. After 6 months of pushing and developing products around the retained service, 40% of their business now comes from retained placements, which I think is demonstrative of where the markets are going in particular. From a range point of view as well, I'd also like to be looking at the types and numbers of companies that I'm actually working with as well. And what I'm trying to reduce is the number of organizations I'm heavily reliant upon. So another example of an organization we were doing some work with a while ago, and they had 47% of their business was coming from just one customer. They had that customer for about 10 years. The customer went back out to a tender process. Guess what happened? They lost that customer. Overnight, they lost their entire business overnight. So it's very smart to make sure you have a nice cross-section and a blend of customers, and you're not overly reliant on one or two of those customers. Once you've identified who those customers are, the next thing you need to do is create a very prominent and very focused land and expand strategy within those businesses. I do have a massive concern in the recruitment sector that our account development strategies are very, very limited and very, very poor. I think we spend a lot of time trying to win new business all the time, not enough time really trying to dive deep within those customers and land and expand as much as we possibly can and secure that business as we have. What we tend to do in our business and what we advise a lot of recruitment organizations to do is to try and categorize your customers into what we call A's, B's, and C's. A's being the high-value customers with lots of opportunity, B's not so much, C's a little bit less. You then need to identify today who are your A customers going to be tomorrow. How many of those customers do you currently have, your B's and C's? And what are your strategies to try and turn those B's and C customers into A customers over the next 2 to 3 years? There's actually a scientific measurement behind this. So you identify exactly how many A, B, and C customers you need to have in your business in order to achieve your EBITDA and your profit margins that you want. So I'm happy to share that with you afterwards. We then need to look at our composition and about systems and processes. Obviously here today talking about LinkedIn. We need to understand really from our systems point of view, are we creating systems that are enhancers of our service or are they prohibitors of our productivity? And I think a lot of organizations I work with have hundreds and hundreds of systems running, some concurrently, some disjointedly across their business. What we need to do is understand truly what the return on investment is for each of those systems. If we're going to utilize a system such as LinkedIn, we need to really, really utilize it and invest heavily in that. Not only for what we're trying to do today, but for the type of business that we're trying to create for tomorrow as well. And that's significantly important. The next part of composition is the culture. James Carr mentioned this earlier on about having the right sort of culture within your business. I think that's absolutely key. I would be looking for a culture that's where I've got people in my business who are heavily focused on growth, who are heavily entrepreneurial and heavily service focused as well. They want to deliver an excellent service to their customer base in order to be able to land and expand those customers. So what we tend to look at is a thing called the Net Promoter Score. A lot of organizations use the Net Promoter Score from an external point of view to see how much their customers would actually recommend them as an organization. We like to use the Net Promoter Score from an internal point of view. How many of your internal talent, your internal staff would actually recommend working within your organization? What's that level of engagement like? I've walked into some recruitment organizations before where you cannot even see the culture. The culture doesn't even exist. It's very disjointed. There's nothing really happening in there. Other organizations you walk into, everything pivots around that culture. It is the right sort of culture for growth, and it is the sort of culture that will achieve high value in the future. Once we've got some of these things in place, one of the key things that we think is really important to do is measure absolutely everything that happens, and in particular, measure the outputs that we're creating across the board. I talked about those 40 recruitment organizations that we were benchmarking against. These are high-growth, high-value recruitment organizations that basically are killing it at the moment in these current markets. When we looked at those organizations, 68% of those had an average GP per consultant of between 100 and 300K of these billing consultants, 12% of which had over 250K average GP per billing consultant, which I think is quite exceptional. So it's really important to measure and benchmark every output that exists within your business to make sure you've got a nice consistent spread across your business, across all your consultants, again, reducing that risk. But then to benchmark that against what other people are doing in the industry to see actually, are you doing okay? I've been to some organizations before where they reward people for mediocrity. And that's really quite frightening if you think about it, because then you're creating a culture which is based around mediocrity, for that matter. The final sort of, I suppose, echelon or the areas in particular where it comes down to when you're trying to create a really high-value recruitment business, again, James mentioned this before, is around the people side of things. When you look at your people, we know currently in the marketplace there's a real dearth of good quality recruitment talent out there in the marketplace, unfortunately. A lot of people have left since the recession, a lot of people have gone in-house and so on and so forth, and a lot of people aren't willing to move at the moment as well. The people underpin your growth plans. You will never grow as a recruitment business unless you have the right types of people on board. So therefore, you need to invest significantly in understanding the types of talent pools that are potentially out there for us to utilize within our recruitment businesses. We were just chatting a second ago with Darren about the Australian market, and we're trying to find good quality talent in the Australian market. It's not very easy to do. So we need to understand what people are looking for and what people are like at the moment. Once we've identified that, there's some questions we need to think about. We need to understand that current talent market and embrace it. We need to develop a talent proposition to make sure that we become an employer of choice. I was speaking at a conference about 12 months ago to a group of non-recruitment agencies. These are all in-house recruiters. And before I went to the conference, I looked at all of their talent portals they had on their websites. About 3 of them I thought were actually quite engaging and quite interesting. The rest of them were terrible. Absolutely awful. Does that make them an employer of choice? Probably not. We need to become diversity champions, especially in a talent-short marketplace, and we need to reach out to those diverse talent pools and tap into them as much as we possibly can. One of the key things we must focus on doing is trying to recruit for character, not for skills. You can train skills, but you can't train for character. Often still today, we're still trying to recruit that perfect recruitment consultant that exists out there who's willing to move from their existing business to come and work for us. They really don't exist, unfortunately. So we need to recruit for the right types of character to fit in with our culture, and then we can then train them up on the skills to be able to do the job. We need to create career pathways that are aligned to the types of generations and the types of talents that we're looking for. Okay, the talent today, the millennials, the Generation Ys, whatever you want to call them, have a very different focus on what they want to get out of a job, and we need to align our career paths accordingly to that. And most importantly, we need to treat our own business as our best customer. Okay? I have organizations who said the number one challenge, every month when they get together at our elite leader meetings, they say our number one challenge is finding people to grow. We cannot find the right people. You then ask them, what have they done? They've done a couple of things on LinkedIn, they've done a little bit of searching, and that is about it. And they tell me it's a problem. Of course it's a problem. You need to be investing heavily on your recruitment strategy for your internal business. You are your best customer. Treat yourself as you would do with your best customer as well. Once we've got those people on board, it's very important then to keep them and make sure they're heavily motivated and heavily engaged as well. Now, last year, we did a bit of a survey across over about 1,300 recruiters to find out what actually is it that motivates a recruitment consultant in the industry today. It's quite different, I think, from what a lot of people expected. A lot of people thought it's going to be money, right? Let's throw money at them and they'll want to stay more, they'll be more productive as well. But what we actually identified, and you probably can't read this very well, salary was very important, of course, but the interest in the job itself, achievement by the self and department, advancement and promotion, recognition for good work, and the possibility of the job itself gaining new challenges. Out of all those 6 things, the number one thing out there that was the most important thing for recruitment consultants today was this one in the middle here, achievement by self and department. The great thing about this, all those 5 things on the right-hand side of that screen don't cost you any money, which is terrific. But yet, still today, when we're trying to incentivize and motivate our consultants, we're throwing money at them. We stick a check in an envelope, and we say whoever does the most calls or the most activity or whatever it might be will get that envelope. And we wonder why it's the same people time and time again who keep winning that and nobody else does. We've got to really understand what engages people today and get underneath the skin of that and then truly motivate people. The final part of it is around the management piece. I spend a lot of time running leadership development programs. Our Elite Leader program is designed around management piece. We have a program called Elite Future Leaders, which is heavily focused on the succession planning process of a business. If you are trying to build a recruitment business that's enduring, potentially that you might want to sell at some point, then you need to, as managers and owners of that business, need to step away from that business and have a true succession plan in place with a really tight, effective management tier in place underneath you. Really important to be able to do that. Having said that, what generally happens is what we typically do in most recruitment organizations that I've experienced is that we find our top billers and we go, congratulations, you're the top biller, we're now going to promote you to become a manager or a leader of a team. Guess what happens 3 months later? Their billings start dropping off, they start getting disengaged a little bit, and they don't earn as much money as they did before, and they lose that engagement piece as well. It's important if you're going to promote somebody, promote them because they're the greatest leader in your business or the greatest leadership potential in your business, not necessarily because they're the best billers. It doesn't often correlate. In 2012, we actually did a survey across 1,100 recruitment consultants, and we asked them what they thought about their management team within their businesses. There are a load of results about this, which I'm happy to share afterwards with the slides that we're going to send out. But two things in particular came out of it. 69% felt that their manager wasn't a particularly good role model for them, and almost half felt that they didn't have confidence in their leadership skills of their manager at the moment as well. That says to me there's a problem in our leadership planning. It says to me there's a problem in our succession planning as well. We've got to get that absolutely right. As owners of a business, if you are an owner of a recruitment company, you've got to have the ability to have a team of people that you can trust to deliver on the business when you're not there. So in essence, when we asked our question, what would we do to try and create an enduring, high-value business, a recruitment business tomorrow, we very simply say we try and get our house in order. It's as simple as that. And these 12 things up here, these would be the top 12 items on every single one of our monthly board meeting agendas, without doubt. We'll be measuring this every single time. We'll be looking for a business that's robust, that's valuable, that's efficient, and that's profitable as well. And we believe, and it's been proven time and time again, that these are the 12 core elements that make a great recruitment organization. As already mentioned before, if any of you would like to come along to one of our Elite Leader sessions, we'd love to welcome you as a guest to come and experience what we do every month. It would be fantastic to get you along there. What we do as part of that process is we take you through what we call an Elite Business Health Check, where we'll run your business through a process where we can measure not only how effective your business is based on those 12 elements, but also how you compare with other people in the market as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, James. So, my name's Ollie Sharp. I worked at LinkedIn for 5.5 years. Before that, I had 10 years in the recruitment space. And when I started at LinkedIn, I was working on the corporate side of our business, working with your clients. And for the last 2 years, I've been managing the UK staffing team. Hopefully, the people you're talking to in the UK. So what I'm going to talk about is building your brand at scale. First thing to think about is what is brand, because it's quite confusing. A lot of people think it's your logo, it's just the badge that people see when they go to your website or anything. It's a lot more hard to actually understand. And when we talk to clients, they struggle to actually explain it. So I want to start with what it means and what it is, so it gets it clear in your mind. It's really part science and part art. Derives from the old Norse word, branda, meaning to burn, which started on cattle to say, this is mine. Then it moved to the wooden boxes, wooden crates. For people, it was a sign of good quality and good source. In the 1940s, manufacturers realized that people were actually building relationships with brands. They had a feeling about these brands, more in a social and psychological sense. So a brand actually guarantees quality, evokes an emotion, or instills a belonging. There's lots of people that try to make it clearer for us. A gentleman called Seth Godin, best-selling author, public speaker. A brand is a set of expectations, memories, stories, and relationships that, taken together, account for a consumer's decision to choose one service or another. There's a gentleman called Marty Neumeier, who's an author of a great book called Zag, which looks at the strategy of high-performing brands. The best way he explains it is that marketing is a process of communicating the value of a product or a service. Advertising is how you promote that product or a service, whereas the branding is the consumer's feeling towards that product or a service. A gentleman called Wally Ollins, a bit of the king of brand within the UK, who's a British practitioner. He says that brand is simply an organization, product or service with a personality, and that's how we need to think about it. It's your company's personality. Jeff Bezos, founder and CEO of Amazon, feels it's what people say about you when you're not in the room. Stanley Hainsworth was creative director of Nike, Lego, and Starbucks. He saw it a little bit differently. The key to creating brand is telling the company's story. The product or the service is simply the poop of that story. So if we look at a few brands, there's lots of brands that we know. As soon as someone says brand, you probably think of Coca-Cola, etc. Coca-Cola was first produced in 1886. By a pharmacist called John Pemberton. The actual name and the logo came from his bookkeeper. He's probably now got the most famous handwriting in the world, and that came from just him writing the name when he actually decided what it would be. They were formed in 1892, but their brand is very much about the classic, the original. They were the original cola out on the market. The company now is worth around $78 billion. Huge, huge. But Interbrand state that 61% of that is purely down to that brand name, and people's thoughts about what Coca-Cola means to them. Pepsi, on the other hand, people think it's a lot more of a newer brand, because that is what their brand is. They've tried this next generation, etc., but they were actually started and founded only 6 years after Coca-Cola. Okay, and they started to compete with them, first of all, on price, but back in about late 50s, they actually decided they would start this new brand, that the new brand being new, young, Pepsi generation, and they even brought to us the Pepsi Challenge, which really proved to us how strong a brand could be, because people bought more Coca-Cola, but when it wasn't on taste, it was purely on brand. So that opened people's eyes to how strong a brand can be and what impact it can have on your figures. Most companies up until now, and still companies do it now, is they brand on what they do. Let's take HP, for example. They offer great computers. When they advertise, it's about RAM and all these things that I don't actually understand. Whereas you have someone like Apple, cool, creative, innovative, and stylish. Their brand is done the other way around. They start with why they do it. Okay, so it's more about they have a passion to cut, and I know Dave's going to speak about this in more detail a little bit later, so I'm not going too much about it, but they start with their why and they end up with what they do. They want to make things different, they want to make things look cool, and they just happen to make great computers. There's great, for more information on that, as well as Dave, there's a TED Talk from Simon Sinek, and he goes through the why, the what's, the hows, and how you actually can brand yourself properly by using, it gives more passion by talking about why you do something rather than what you do. So another company that go with the why is Starbucks. They set out, they say they're not a trend, they're a lifestyle. They set out, their why was to be the third place between home and work. A brand to think about, John Lewis, and this is interesting probably for people in the UK, because we can find the products we can buy at John Lewis or Waitrose anywhere else, but we still buy it from John Lewis. And there's one key to that, it's probably the trust element of what they offer. It's quality, it's trust, even though we can get it somewhere else for cheaper. One interesting brand, Adidas. So Adolf Dassler, founder of the modern sporting goods industry, 1949, he put the first 3 stripes on his trainers, purely so people knew that they were his. That was the first time any sporting equipment was actually branded. But they've got 3 brands, and lots of people know of Adidas. They don't realize there's actually 3 brands, and they've got different brands behind them. So 3 brands, but so there's the performance brand, which is the sports brand. Around 70% of the business comes from that side. It concentrates on functionality and innovation. That's what they want people to understand about their brand. Heritage, famous from Run DMC, etc. It's the old school feel, showcases the brand's rich history. Whereas the style concentrates on fashion. It only makes about 5% of their business, but it's a fashion brand. So why is brand important in the recruitment space? That's obviously outside of recruitment, but it's becoming more and more important in our space. So we've come from a world where in the past, less things have had an impact on your brand, and you've been more in control. And that's the key here. Up until now, and James Kahn was talking about the changes within the recruitment space, and that has changed how much control you have over your own brand. We used to get on the phone to take the job specs. We'd advertise the jobs. We'd also have a website, and there's word of mouth, but word of mouth was smaller then because people talked more on a one-to-one basis rather than going on social media and sharing their thoughts. Everything's changed because of the internet, social media, etc. So what this means is you're now in less control of your brand. And so you've got to be more aware of what's happening around you and learn different skills to be able to bring back some control or how you react to what is happening out on social media. So branding is no longer what you say to the customer, it's what they say to each other. And when you think about it, and Dan touched on this earlier, the likes of TripAdvisor. I know I went on holiday recently. I went on Facebook and said, anyone know where's good in Portugal? I got a few ideas back. I went on TripAdvisor. Then I just booked a holiday. I didn't actually talk to 4 brands to find out if they can sell to me. And that's how we are as individuals. And Dan said earlier, people make around 60% of the decision-making process prior to any direct interaction with the brand. If that's how we are as individuals, you're dealing with individuals in the recruitment space. That's how they act. It's not, oh, well, they don't do that in recruitment. They still do. So how do you build your brand? Most PR companies or agencies that will help you with this, the first question that most of them will ask is, if your company was a car, what car would it be? It's a great question to ask yourselves. Or some will ask you what supermarket you would be. Are you the Mercedes? These guys brought us the first automobile with a combustion engine, prestigious, luxurious. Toyota gave us the first hybrid car. They're innovative. But they also have a different brand behind the innovation as well. They didn't confine this new technology to their own brand, like the Sony Betamaxes of the world. They learned what to do. They weren't protective or defensive. They shared the information with Nissan for the good of green cars globally and the whole environment. So that gives them a different element to their brand, not just innovation, but also more forward thinking about the green space. BMW, are you the ultimate driving machine, some would see it as. But also this, when you think about it, this brands the person driving it as well. Most people would actually see someone driving a BMW, apologies if this is insult to anyone, but likely to be wealthy, adrenaline-seeking, competitive and driven. That's what they see. Some people will say that the Mercedes driver is the person that's got there, the BMW is the person that wants to get there. Then you have the Ford Model T. Obviously, you can get it in any color as long as it's black, but this was the vehicle for the masses. It's high quality, high volume, and at low prices. Or are you the safe bet? So once you've worked that out, you can't just go out there and just put an advert out saying, yeah, we're fun, we're this. You don't see Mercedes advertising like this. That's not how they can do it. You guys can't stand on a pedestal and just say we are the best. Okay? We need to be more subtle and portray the brand that we want to achieve and we want people to feel about us. So first step in that is defining your target audiences. You've got to know who you're targeting this towards to understand what brand you want to portray. And you've got 3 brands really, because you've got to think about clients. How do you want your clients to see you? How do you want your candidates to see you? But also, how do you want your potential consultants, if you're growing or you're placing anybody, you need to have a good employer brand. And there's some guys with Umang, John Hull, Lindsay later talking about how you build that employer brand. So, what makes up and impacts your brand? So bear in mind this is the feeling of anybody, the feeling they have about your company, anyone that you could be interested in, whether client, candidate, or consultant. The answer to that is the whole world around you. Okay, most people will start off, well, it's our website on our logo. Correct, that's part of it. It's not the whole of it. You've also got you and your consultants. Any conversation, any interview, anything that you do where you are speaking to anybody or doing anything, an email out, that impacts your brand. If it's bad, detrimental to your brand. But also you've got your office. It's no good giving a great service and then people turn up in your office and it's an absolute dive. That is impacting your brand anyway. But what lots of companies do is the other way around. They don't invest in their website, but they have a fantastic office. If people see your website, don't like your brand, they're not going to even get to your office. Social media and word of mouth. That is the main difference that has changed since the 5-10 years ago that can make a bigger impact on your brand now. So you need to be aware of it, and I'll go through that at the end. But also when you think about it, your clients and candidates impact your brand. If you send an absolutely terrible, I'll use that word, candidate to a client, that client, their feeling about you is no longer as positive. Okay, and other way around, if you're sending a great candidate to an absolutely shy client, that's not going to be good for them as well. And they will talk because of social media. So, logo is a tiny part of it, but there is things behind a logo. You've got to think about what does your logo say. And just very quickly, there's a color emotion guide here that goes through what colors mean when they're within a brand. So you can see the companies such as the HPs of the world, they've gone with blue. It's the color of trust. Opus Recruitment, creative, imaginative, and wise. Wise? The green, the peaceful, the growth, etc. So the actual brand color impacts, and obviously website color, etc. One thing that is out of your reach to actually control so much, but you can do something about, is that people talk a lot more, okay? And that people will listen, people accept information from their friend more than they'll accept from your website. So you're hoping they're talking about you positively, but most people will go on social media and the web when they're unhappy. So any bad experience they get with your brand, you've got to be aware of it. And I'll go through that with the steps at the end. One key thing, there's one thing that if a person does not have in your brand, they will not buy from you, and that is trust. This is key to any brand. Think about these companies that have lost their trust of their consumers, and people have stopped buying from them, no longer exist. So, just some takeaways for you. What should you be doing next? thinking about building your brand. And just one thing, we talk a lot about LinkedIn about a structure, a strategy of build, engage, recruit, which is building your followers, engage them with relevant content, and it will help you recruit. That also helps you build your brand, and that content should be relevant to what you want your brand to be. I wanted this to be a little bit away from LinkedIn, so this is more general advice. So, first of all, define your target audiences. Think about who they are, not just what they are, not just an IT director, who they are, what they do, what they like. And think of the three that we talked about earlier, clients, candidates, consultants. Also define what you want your brand to be. Ask yourselves that question. If we were a car, you can not pay a PR agency from this. So ask yourselves, if you're a car, what car would you be? How do you see yourselves? Think about how you want all of these three audiences to feel. When they see your logo, see your website, do you want them to feel like you're in control? Do you want them to feel that you're fun? Maybe your Facebook page is a bit more fun than anywhere else, etc. So just make sure you think about how you want them to feel about your brand and when they see you. Key thing is we see a lot of leadership teams within agencies that they know what they want their brand to be, but they haven't told anyone else about it. And they're impacting their brand. Their consultants are having different conversations that don't back up their brand to what the management actually thinks. It's key to make sure that everyone within your company is on the same page. And also keep your brand consistent across all channels. People need to see things 7 times to actually remember what they've seen. And if you've got different channels saying different messages with different brands, then you're confusing them and you may as well not have a brand. Looking at social media, how to build a brand more on social media. This is key where your website is probably a bit more professional. Social media is where you use it to reflect the personality of your business. You can have the fun behind it on Facebook. You can do what you want. So put your personality through on social media. Choose the right social media channels. Not all are right for every company. You may find teachers on Pinterest or people that are more in creative roles on Pinterest. You may find your own consultants on Facebook, but not every channel is right for everybody. Make your content native to the platform. There's a great book by a guy called Gary Vaynerchuk that's called Jab, 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 Right Hook. And the key to this is about people go to a platform because they want to feel something from that platform. They go for a certain reason. So if I go to Facebook, I don't want to see what a server does. I want to have fun. I want to see, well, I don't really want to see a cat doing something, but it's, that's what you see. That's what you go to Facebook for. That's native to that platform. So Facebook becomes a bit more fun, whereas LinkedIn is more professional. So make sure that the content you're putting out there is native to the platform where it is. This is key. Most people in the recruitment space, most people out of the recruitment space as well, they see Twitter and LinkedIn as somewhere where they just broadcast. That's not right. What you're doing is you're missing a massive thing that you should be listening to your target audiences as well. Find out what they're talking about. Find out what they say about your clients, your competition, yourselves. Listen to them, and how you react to that is important. And there's loads of companies in the corporate space especially that when something goes out on social media that is bad, that they react brilliantly. And one of my ex-managers was moaning about being on a plane, sat on the runway, put it on Twitter. By the time he got off at the other end, there was some special chauffeur taking him to his hotel because they'd reacted in that way. That brand was actually positive rather than negative of his first tweet. Finally, build the appropriate followers, engage them with relevant information, relevant content, and it will help you build your brand and recruit. And that's on social media, not just LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, etc. So thank you very much for that. I hope it's helped you and given you some takeaways. I'm going to now hand you over to Darren Rymel. Darren is a client of ours. He's the owner, it's not working, of Opus Recruitment Solutions. And he's also started from the success he's had with his company. He's also started being an advisor to some smaller companies that are looking to grow. He's just come back from Australia, found an office in Australia, looking to expand into Amsterdam. So some great growth within his own company and also advised other companies. So I'm going to hand you over to Darren.
Cheers. Hello, mate. That's good. First thing I think about building a business, actually I should just add a little bit on there. So I flipped up my laptop on holiday. I was in Cyprus and my little girl come running up and she went, "Daddy, what are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, well, when I go back, Daddy needs to speak to some people about some stuff." And she said, "What's that?" I said, "Well, I need to talk about how to build a business." And she said, why do you want to tell them that? And I was like, well, I don't know. Perhaps they might want to listen. She went, don't tell them that, Daddy. Tell them how to build a business which is brilliant. And I thought, that's a good thing. So I thought, right, I'm going to add it on there as a title. So which is brilliant is courtesy of my 8-year-old daughter. You can be the judge of whether you think this is or not. But 4 steps that are, I think, have helped Opus grow at the scale that we have. So firstly, set clear goals to work towards. Now, if I was sat in a room now and some fat ginger guy stood up in front of me and said, you need to plan to fail to plan. This isn't about plan to fail, all that crap. What this is about is actually knowing what you're aiming for and being honest with yourself about that aim. So for me, it starts at the company aim perspective. So our company aim at Opus Recruitment Solutions is to be a global leader in specialist recruitment solutions. So that is quite clear. There's some big words in there. Global, that means we need an international presence, so that's what we're trying to do. Specialist recruitment solutions means we want to remain niche. So we know what we're trying to do, and that is actually core to our business. It's not being dictated upon us, it's something that we actually want to achieve. And I think this is a really important starting point, because I don't know how many of you know your company aim. Hopefully everyone will go, yes, we all know it and we can recite it and it's fantastic. But how many of you buy into that company aim and actually see that that is what your company's trying to do? And without that, you're completely lost from the start. It's like getting in a car going, we don't know where we're going. And everyone going, no, neither do we. You've got no hope of getting there. Reading a book at the moment by Andy McNabb, the SAS guy, or ex-SAS guy. And he writes something in it. He says, even the greatest shot in the world, or the greatest marksman in the world, cannot hit their target if they don't know where it is or what it is. So for me, it's about that. Just define it. You don't have to spend hours in a boardroom coming up with loads of crap about what it's going to be and how it's going to do it and all the rest of it. But just know what you're trying to achieve, then go get it. Targets and goals, I've written after they're long term. Don't be scared of dreaming big, okay? And don't be scared of continually changing that and what is bigger. So when I first set up Opus, I had no idea that we were going to go on and become what we were going to do. We had the ambition to, but 6 years ago, I didn't know we'd be sort of like, having international offices and a turnover of about 30-odd million pounds and all the rest of it. And the reason we've got there is because we've dreamt big and we've continually dreamt bigger on top of that size. So I'll give you an idea of how this works. And it's a horrible thought for some of you and think, we're now at 30 million. I'm already talking about 100 million turnover, which I think we're going to get to in the next couple of years. I was in the shower the other day. I was half jet lagged, well, very jet lagged. So I was in Australia and I was like trying to wake myself up to have a meeting. I told you it's a horrible image for most of you. And it went through my head for the first time. Could we do 1 billion? And, and I know I'm deluded. I'm stood there in the shower washing my hair thinking, you are one deluded moron, Darren Rymel. But it went through my head. We're already redefining that ambition goal and what we want to achieve. So for me, there's 4 types of targets that are worth monitoring. Sales targets, as James mentioned. I go into some businesses, I speak to them, I go, what's your sales target this month? And they go, oh, we don't really know. How can you not know? How can you be a salesperson and not know what you're trying to achieve from a sales perspective? It's just ridiculous. They don't know what their activity targets. It needs to be something like, what do I need to do to actually achieve what I want to achieve? What works for me? How many managers do I need to add? How many phone calls do I need to make? What's my conversion rate on this and this? And I just can't even get my head around it. People don't even know that. I'm going to give you an example of making those targets really ambitious and significant. A guy that used to work for Opus, used to work for me, he left. He actually tried a bit of an internal coup and was going to go and set up on his own with another sort of like couple of guys. Great guy as well, by the way. I really like him. But as it was, we retained the other guys, and he then went off his own. He ended up at a huge multinational business. So he's gone in there as like a sales manager of this huge multinational business. Heard back from him, he said, Dad, you would not believe this. I'm like, what? He said, there's 8 consultants. Their target per month is £70,000 whiteboard billing per month. It's a huge brand, huge brand. I'm not going to tell you because it's inappropriate. 70 grand from 8 consultants. He said, guess how many times they've done it in the last 12 months? I was like, every time? Otherwise they'd all be hanging themselves. He was like, nah, they've done it twice in the last 12 months. And I was like, I can't even understand this. But anyway, for them, that was okay. That was how they were performing, and whatever happened, it was fine. And obviously, so anyway, that's the activity targets, what needs to be done. Growth targets, how big do you want to get? Think about those targets. Think about how many people you're going to employ and all the rest of it. Similar to, as James was saying, you have to know how many people you need and how you're going to get those targets and make them real. And then something that I actually think is probably the most important target and the most overlooked. Perception goals. And there's a question mark on that because I didn't even know what I meant when I was writing it down. But it's about internal and external perception. We want to make sure that we were perceived as a value-added business. Now, that's not just to our clients, but that's to our people internally. We wanted our internal people and our clients to think that we were cutting edge and also that we were niche, that we were specialists in what we do. Now, whilst it's important to the people internally to feel that, because I don't think they can really sell us as that if they don't believe it themselves. Hi, we're a very value-adding type business, blah, blah, blah. They don't believe what we do. How can they sell it? Anyway, move on. Slide 2. I'm doing really well. Okay, second thing on top of the goals is building a good and scalable culture. Now, 2 things on this. First thing, everyone says about people are the most valuable thing in your business. And I believe that and I say that as well. And it's really important that people. However, what happens if those people get run down in a bus? What happens if I die? Okay, when I die, there must be a succession plan, right? And the succession plan actually has nothing to do with people. What it has to do with is the culture of the business, how the business can just continue. So I was watching a program the other day about James Hunt and Nicky Lauda, and the principal of the Ferrari team at the time. Nicky Lauda obviously had a big accident, got burnt, and the principal was like, doesn't matter who's in our car. Really doesn't matter who's in the car. You put an average racing driver in a great car, they'll win. Put a great racing driver in an average car, they got no chance. And it was like, well, that's true. Ferrari was so much more significant than the individual person. So whilst people are important, it's the culture. So I always think, be honest with that culture. If you want a hard work culture where people are money driven, everyone in this room probably got into recruitment because you made the mistake of saying, I'm money motivated, I'm driven and ambitious, I'd kill my own gran if you'd pay me 50 pence. And that's probably how we all got into it. Now, how many of us have retained that in our jobs? How many of us work with people that show and demonstrate that? Probably none. We're working with people that lie. We're lying. Yes, I'm money motivated, but I need to go at 4:30 because it's really important because EastEnders is on. Well, what? It's just stupid. The fact I don't even know what time EastEnders is on is probably indicative of how often I work. So be honest with that culture. If you want to work hard, say you want to work hard and then attract people that do the same. If you want a lifestyle business or you want to leave at 5, be honest. Here at Recruitment, we all make enough money to be happy, and that's what we do, and we're fine with that. That's also fine. Not everyone has to be killing your gram for 50p. It's okay to have different ways of doing it. And then in terms of keeping the culture during growth, Ollie asked me a question when he sat down and ripped off all my good ideas for this that I've now had to drop. He said, how do you keep that as you're growing? Because he said, Dad, there's like 80 odd of you now at the moment. It's not the same as when there was one of you and you could just bully everybody to do it how you wanted to do. And I'm like, well, firstly, culture comes first and there's no compromise on that. So if you've got somebody who's a big biller but is an absolute tool and goes against the grain of what you do, always remember that one person will never bill more than 1,000 people. So you want the 1,000 people to be doing the right things, operating in the right way. The one person, get rid of him, let him go make some money for someone else who won't grow their business, but be able to get fat off his billings. That's always been sort of like my mentality. Don't be scared of that. And also something that is in no management book that I've read or anything like this, it's just my own stupid idea, something called the rule of 5. I don't think you can have effective management relationships with more than 5 people. You might be able to, say if you've got a couple of really passive, easy to manage people, you might be able to up that to 6, maybe 7. And likewise, if you've got a few hard work people, it might be down to like 3 or 4. So what you need to do is empower the people beneath you to have those relationships as well, to manage in the same vision, so that you implant your vision on the people, the culture then becomes key, and they then repeat the culture, and they can manage the culture and make sure that what is happening is just continuing. Right. Change. I think everybody has spoken about it. James Kahn spoke about it really nicely when he was talking about the fax machine and all the rest of it. I'm pleased to say that I wasn't involved in recruitment when we were doing fax machines or typing letters because I'm young and cool. I'm not young and cool. But for me, the top recruitment businesses, and I think what we've done okay at Opus, is be ready for change. Understand that change happens. I can remember I brought in one of my top billing consultants once, and I said to her, I said, look, I don't want you to do the PHP market anymore, where she'd done okay. I said, I want you to do testing. She cried. We had a week of crying, and within a month, she'd done more billings than she'd ever done before. Because actually, for her, change was good. It was a positive thing. And with change, there's like technological change and all the rest of it. And Ollie said, so how do you plan for change? And I was like, well, that's a good question, because you don't know what the change is. I mean, how do you plan for the government going, we're all going to regulate you lot, you're all cowboys, you shouldn't be giving people career advice, you now must have this certification, blah, 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 to be a recruitment consultant. How do you plan for that? Well, you sort of can't, because you don't know what the certification is or anything like that. So you just need to create a business that is agile, that can adapt, that can say, do you know what? We are used to change. We embrace change here. Whether it be a technological shift, I don't think any of you are out there smashing the phones going, hello, I've got a great COBOL developer, and he's awesome, and he's really in demand. You might be, but you probably aren't, because they're not that in demand anymore. What has happened has been a change of skill, so you've actually changed all the time. You've embraced the change anyway, but just keep it agile enough so that you can move with the times. And the fourth thing I've got is to be brave and innovative. Embrace new working methods. Exactly as James Kahn was saying earlier, and it's not a LinkedIn promo pitch. In fact, Ollie has asked me not to speak too much about LinkedIn because he don't want it to look like it's salesy. But LinkedIn is where it's at the moment. If you look at the changes, I think there's a seismic change circa every 10 years in the recruitment industry. I think, well, 10 years ago, LinkedIn was invented-ish, about that. And now I think LinkedIn's probably at its most powerful spot. Not that it could get to, but certainly it has got to. Go back 10 years before, it was the job boards, as James Conn. I remember I sat next to my colleague at the time, and we were working for S3, and we'd sort of like just invested in this IT job board at S3. You probably all know it, you all heard of it maybe. And I was like, even our own company's getting a job board. It is over. They don't need us anymore. And the irony is that actually the biggest users of job boards are recruitment people. The biggest users of LinkedIn are recruitment people. A little story. Okay, so there's a lady, she was named one of the most influential people in the technical world. Her name's Sherry, and she's on the LinkedIn advisory board. She was on the Google advisory board and loads of other places. I want to work with her. I want her to get involved in a project that I'm working for. I said, give me your hardest to fill position in any of your businesses, and I'll get it filled for you without a fee, no problem. She went, right, I think it was like a Python developer or something like that, so we just can't find anybody. Anyway, I said, okay, well, we'll find you one. She went, I'm not being funny, Darren. I'm kind of involved with LinkedIn, I know all about it. How are you going to do this? I went, we'll do it because actually we're better users of LinkedIn than you are. We're the super users. That's what separates us. Like, job site isn't the place. They're not going to fill your job. The users of job site will. Anyway, we filled their job. It's a long time outstanding thing. Hopefully now she'll return the favour and get involved with something I'm doing. But so embrace new working methods, whatever they are, embrace them. Don't just sit in a cave with a fax machine going, look at those idiots out there thinking LinkedIn's a good thing. Invest, and just keep refreshing yourself and keep up to pace with change. Spot trends and create trends. For me, so I've put on here, I believe that the next big thing in the recruitment industry is not going to be video. Sorry if I offend anyone here. It's not going to be video interviewing or anything like this. I think it's going to be gamification. I think career simulation and gamification is where the industry is going to go. That's what's going to separate the super employers to the others. And I think in the next 10 years, you'll see the rise of gamification. This is why, and so this is not a pitch, Ollie told me not a pitch, but I've got involved in something called Talent Cubes. This is like trying to create trends. So Talent Cubes are an online portal. Basically, it's like the app store for these career simulations and games. People can go on there, play a game, see how they get on, and how you perform against that game can be viewed by employers. So Microsoft, Deutsche Bank, PwC, and lots of other top employers currently find people this way. So you could be sat in your pants in Thailand, playing the Microsoft development game, prove that you're a great developer, you get a phone call or an email from Microsoft saying, well done, you are awesome, come work for us. So Microsoft, by creating a game, can actually be very, very active, passive recruiters by getting the people. So importance of brand. So I walked into a meeting, I was with Lauren. So Lauren's our marketing manager, and we went into PR agency, they were going to do our website, so we needed a new fill and all the rest of it. First question, what kind of car would your business be? I was like, you what? They're like, yeah, well, if you were a car, what kind of car would you be? Lauren could see me, I'm just going red, my head's about to explode. I'm like, this is a waste of everyone's time and probably my money. And I thought, no, do you know what? Let's run with this. Let's give this thing a chance. And the other question is like, how do you want your website visitor to feel? You know, how do you want them to feel? And I thought, well, do you know what? Actually, this is not abstract, daft questions. What this is the core basics of our business and what we're trying to do. So for me, it was always clear. When I thought about it, we were always a nice, big, proud silver Mercedes. We weren't the cheapest thing in the marketplace, but we were proud. We looked the part, we acted the part. No, I don't look the part, but as a business, you know, we displayed ourselves in the right way. And we wanted that to run through the theme of everything. So whether you're on the phone to one of our consultants, or whether you're receiving an email from one of our consultants, or hitting our website, or whatever, I want this to look the same, to look and feel the same. I mean, it's important you get that right, I think. The consistency of that brand, well, if you think about it in terms of logo, it does change, okay? It will change, it will develop. We've already had 3 incarnations of our logo. Guess what? No client has ever said to us, we're going to have to stop using you now because you've changed your logo. So it's never had a negative effect that we're aware of. However, we've had positive feedback where people said, do you know what? This really feels fresh. And we've also had people come to us and say, I like your new look, I like your new feel, I like what you're doing, and we'd like to work with you. The desired feeling of the brand, again, talking to Ollie about it, and I said, well, I can remember when I was very, very new into recruitment, I sort of thought about this my own way. How do I want the person on the end of the phone to feel? Well, I want them to feel, you know, that I am the professional of choice to help them get a job. And that's what I want Opus to be seen as. Likewise, I want the person on the end of the phone to feel that they are special, that, wow, Opus want to deal with me. So Opus pitched themselves as only dealing with the top 10 to 20%, and they chose me. So every phone call, I want my consultant saying, we don't work with everyone in the market, we only work with select candidates. I feel like a select candidate. Do I have more loyalty to Opus, or the other idiot who felt like a Ryanair plane and was just going, yeah, we'll work with anyone, just we'll spam your CV out everywhere. And also the internal and external brand, really important, because externally, yeah, it's really great that clients think of us as a certain way, but however, arguably the internal brand is more important. Recruitment companies are great at brainwashing their staff. I mean, I used to work for S3, and probably they've done the best job of all in terms of like, S3 is awesome, S3 is powerful, S3 is this. And it is all those things. But you're not really encouraged to think differently. And I think recruitment businesses do very well of influencing them staff. So for me, it's important that, again, the internal staff knew what our objections were, knew how we saw ourselves, so they can buy into it and also feel that they wanted to remain bought into it. I'm nearly there now. Okay, industry has changed, as we've said, and this is specifically relevant, I guess, to things like LinkedIn and Twitter. I wasn't on a fax machine, but I was on the phone. I still think the phone is our weapon of choice when taking on candidates. Not that we use weapons with candidates, but you know, that's our domain. That's how we communicate. That's nearer a proper relationship than a Twitter update saying, hello, I'm doing this. However, you need to embrace the other ways as well. Communication channels have moved on from just being able to phone everybody. So, I mean, we won an award recently to be, apparently we're the most engaged user of Twitter in the recruitment sector, which was fantastic. I don't ever go on Twitter, but the business does, so it shows we're in a good spot. And it's things like that that make you realise that actually it is powerful, because we've been contacted by somebody in Hong Kong who said, I've heard good things about your business, I see that you're active, I'd really like to get involved in maybe opening up a Hong Kong or Singapore office for you. Same in Australia. Somebody said to us, Darren, I know what's going on with you. I found you online. The other week we had it from somebody in South Africa. And also some good UK staff have approached us and said, your story seems positive. I'd like to be involved in that. I've not spoken to these people. They don't know me from Adam, but it shows the power of making sure your brand is right and it says the right message about you. And actually, more importantly, and take it back to the kill your gram for 50p, what's in it for me, money, show me money. LinkedIn, Twitter, etc., I think are your new modern shopfront. Whereas before, when it comes to selling a recruitment business, they might have gone, oh, do you have an office frontage in a central high street location or something like this? That may have been relevant. Now, LinkedIn is your shopfront. Twitter is your shop front. This is how you engage with people. This is what people want to see. I think that actually, when the market comes probably on a little bit more than it is now, I don't think you get much of a premium for it at the moment, but give it a couple of years, that business value multiplier that people talk about when they're looking to buy businesses will be jacked up through the roof based on your LinkedIn presence and stuff like this, because that's how you hit more people than any shop front could have done. So that's that. I'm done. Naught. It says naught on the thing, so I think I've overrun. Cheers. Thank you. Bye.